What's up guys, it's Izzy here, welcome back to Yugioh Deck of the Day. Today we have an Ice Barrier deck profile. Finally, after being a meme in the community of Yugioh for such a long time, Konami decided to make a structure deck, Freezing Chains, for this deck, and actually has finally become a playable archetype that has a good strategy that can go with a water strategy being very well, because you know of cards like Abyss Dweller and Bahamut Shark are all very powerful, so if you just make an archetype that can do something on its own and utilize the rank 4 strategy of the waters, then you have a really good deck. And I think this deck is on the right direction. We have a lot of cool new cards. We have a lot of cards from the structure deck actually that are really good. Usually from structure decks you don't get too many cards being new unless you completely renew the strategy of a deck, but this deck didn't really have a strategy of its own, but now it does. So I think it's a really cool thing that Ice Barriers have finally a playable strategy. So this is the list that I have come up with. There are many versions and out there, but you can build your own. You have a lot of ways to build a deck, but I'm kind of focusing more on a rank 4 centric build that can actually utilize the synchros as well, but more focused towards the rank 4s. So before we begin with the video, if you enjoyed, give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss our upcoming content, and now let's get to the deck profile. So the first two monsters I'm going to show you are actually interchangeable. You just need to play a level 3 Ice Barrier monster and level 2 Ice Barrier monster. So the first card I'm going to show you is Yugioh Monster of the Ice Barrier. So this card doesn't have an incredible effect, but there are no level 3 Ice Barrier monsters that have a decent effect to play, so you can replace this with everything you want. So this card, you can discard a card to declare an attribute. This card cannot be selected as an attack target by monsters with a declared attribute. It's not any good, but it's just a level 3. It's also a tuner. You need to play a level 3 and a level 2 just to be able to use the new tuner's effect, to be able to go into multiple levels of synchro. Otherwise, you would not be able to have a lot of utility, but being able to go into level 6 synchros and level 7 synchros was really good, so that's why you need to play these so you can discard them. The level 2 monster is one actually of the new cards, is one copy of Attendant of the Ice Barrier. This card is actually the only level 2 monster of the Ice Barriers that actually has a decent effect. So you can tribute this card to special summon level 5 or higher Ice Barrier monster from your hand. You can actually use this effect, but you don't really need to, because the only level 5 or higher Ice Barrier monster you play in the deck can actually summon itself. But there might be some scenarios where you want to use this effect. But the effect that you actually want to use is that if its card is in the graveyard, you can target a level 3 or higher water monster you control, you reduce its level by 2 and special summon this card from your grave, but banish it when it leaves the field. So this card gives you an extender from the grave that actually makes the summons like Trishula more easily, because you need 3 monsters to summon Trishula. So this card, if you have 2 monsters on the field, you can actually get another one from the grave, so you can use this to summon Trish. So these 2 monsters are actually important because of something I'll show you later. They're not the most important, so you don't need to play more than one, but just one copy of each is actually good enough because you want them to have them in your deck, so you can send them there to change one monster's level. Now for actually the core of the deck, we have 3 copies of Mirror Master of the Ice Barrier. She's actually the best card in the deck by far, because you can just special summon any Ice Barrier tuner from your deck by discarding a card. It locks you into water monsters. You need to be very careful with this, because you have to adjust your extra deck, because when you will see my extra deck, all of my extra deck monsters are water monsters, because usually you want to summon Mirror Master first, so it's not like you can summon anything other than water before. And even if you could, the rank 4 monsters, the water monsters, are actually much better than any generic rank 4, so you wouldn't want to summon anything else anyway. And also, if you would activate an Ice Barrier monster's effect by sending a card from the hand to the grave or discarding, you can banish this card from your grave instead of one of those cards. So she helps you mitigate the cost of your other cards, or herself, you have another copy in your grave, so she actually has a late game usage when she's in the grave as well. 3 copies of Vessel of the Ice Barrier. She's an extender that just special summons herself if you control an Ice Barrier monster, and she also gives you a token by banishing herself from the grave. So a level 1 token can actually be very useful, again because of Trishula, because you need 3 monsters, and she also is an extender that helps you go into your rank 4s more easily. There are already a lot of rank 4 extenders we have for the water archetype, but having one more is actually not bad. 3 copies of General Wayne of the Ice Barrier. This is the only high-level Ice Barrier monster you play, but it's very good because you can just special summon it. If your opponent controls a monster and you control an Ice Barrier monster, you special summon this from your hand, and if this card is normal special summon, you add an Ice Barrier spell and trap from your deck to your hand. And there is actually a really good Ice Barrier card that used to exist before the structure deck that you can add with this, and there's also one more target, and it also has an effect that says that any spell and trap sent from the field to your opponent's graveyard is banished instead. So against the matchup like Eldritch, if you can have this on the field, you can actually get a lot of value of it because your opponent will not be able to float. So this card actually has a lot of utility. You can either use it for synchro material, or if the matchup is right, you can just keep it on the field and you're going to get a lot of value of its first effect. Now the monster you play and you need those level 2 and level 3 monsters in your deck is 2 copies of Frost Spirit of the Ice Barrier. This is a tuner you're going to get out of your deck most of the time with Mirror Master, and it has an effect that you can send a level 3 or lower Ice Barrier monster from your deck to the grave, and this card's level becomes the sent monster's level. So this monster is already level 1, and because you play level 2 and level 3, it actually gives you a lot more options on what you can synchro, so this is why I think you need to play at least one copy of one of the other 2 levels. You can play more if you want to, if you don't want to draw them, but you don't really have to, so this is why this card is really good. Now I play a lot of level 4 extenders for the waters. First, of course, we have 3 copies of Silent Angler. Of course, you see this very often. 3 copies of Tennis Spirit Sana, another monster that you have to start with because you have to control no effect monster to special summon it. 3 copies of Gigabyte. The reason I play Gigabyte is because Mirror Master and Vessel are actually spellcasters, so you can actually special summon this from your hand to have another level 4, which gives you more level 4 water extenders than the normal archetype. 1 copy of Magical Libra. Now the reason this card is here, as you can guess, of course, is because of Unexpected Die. It's a vanilla, and the reason I'm playing this specific monster is because it's a level 4, it's a water, it's a spellcaster for Gigabyte, and it's a tuner as well. So it pretty much serves all the purposes I need for this particular archetype in order to be able to use everything that the deck has to the max potential. And the more extenders you play, the more Bahamut Sharks you can make. Maybe you can make Dweller, maybe you can summon Dragite, which is another really good monster you can summon if you're playing a water deck because it will give you a spell and trap negation. So the more monsters you have, basically what you want to do with this deck is you want to get as many monsters on the field as possible. Usually you will use pretty much your entire hand turn 1 and hope that your opponent can actually break your board. 1 copy of Nightmare Penguin. The reason this card is here is because of Penguin Heroes, a new synchro monster we got recently, and because of Mirror Master, by getting the Frost Spirit and making it level 2, or just getting, and by sending the Attendant of the Ice Barrier to the grave, you can make a level 6 synchro. And there's not another level 6 water synchro that's actually good going first. Of course, I do play Brionac, but you don't really want to summon Brionac turn 1. It doesn't do anything during your opponent's turn. It's not a quick effect. So this is why Nightmare Penguin is here, to give you another kind of disruption, which is actually a good one because with Penguin Heroes you can flip it during your opponent's turn to target a card they control and return to the hand, which is really, really good. And it also boosts all your water monsters' attack by 200, which is something. The only hand trap I play is 3 copies of Ash Blossom. Fortunately, I could not fit more hand traps in this deck because you still need a lot of cards in order to be able to do stuff. Yes, 1 Mirror Master can actually do something, but just ending on 1 negate is actually not enough. You need to play it at least 2. You have to aim for at least 2, make a totally, and make a Penguin Heroes. Otherwise, you will not be able to do much. So the more hand traps you play, the less consistent you make this to happen. So just Ash Blossom, which is most generic one, I think is good enough for the deck. For the spells, play 3 copies of Medallion of the Ice Barrier. This is actually an old card, and it's the only good card that Ice Barriers had in the main deck before. It's just a card that adds an Ice Barrier monster from your deck to your hand, and it's not a once per turn, so you can get multiple copies of this during a turn. You can search this with your General Wayne, and you can actually get a lot of monsters. You can get your Mirror Master if you don't have it. You can get Vessel if you need an extender. It does a lot. 3 copies of Clear Wall of the Ice Barrier. This is a new card that you can actually search with General Wayne. It's a continuous spell, and when it's activated, you target level 4 or lower Ice Barrier in your grave to special summon it. So this gives you another extender because when you use Bahamut Shark, you want to detach the Ice Barrier monster, preferably if you have an Ice Barrier monster and something else under it. So you can actually use Clear Wall to bring that back that Ice Barrier monster to get more monsters on the field. And if you control 3 or more Ice Barrier monsters, they're unaffected by activated effects from any opponent's monster special summon from the extra deck. So this is something you can do if you have a lot of Ice Barrier monsters on the field, but this effect is not actually something that will come up with too much because you don't really get to stay with a lot of Ice Barrier monsters on the field. You usually use them for X-Season synchros. 3 copies of Unexpected Die to get your Magical Libra. 1 instant fusion. I do play Mad Dragon in the extra deck, which is another extender I play. 1 Monster Reborn to get another monster on the field. 1 Call by the Grave because you want to Mirror Master to resolve most of the times, because unless Mirror Master resolves, you will not be able to use any of your synchros. You will just be able to summon Xyz monsters because there is not a good way to get a tuner on the field aside from Mirror Master, so you want her to resolve. And 1 copy of Upstart to make the deck more consistent. For the extra deck, play 1 copy of Trishula. Unfortunately, Trishula is still limited. Maybe now that the structure deck is out, Konami plans on bringing this card back to more than 1 copy, because I don't think there would be too many loops with this card now that all of these tuners have been banned because of Needle Fiber. So I think it will be fine for this card to go back to 3, and this deck can actually benefit a lot from it because you would actually go for more than 1 copy in a lot of duels. 1 copy of Trishula Sub-Zero Dragon of the Ice Barrier. This is a new version of Trishula, which is a card that can actually give you a lot of value because of its high attack power. But the problem with this card is that it actually doesn't make Trishula being treated as a synchro summon. If it did that, it would be so much better because you would actually be able to make your opponent think twice before destroying this card, because if it's destroyed, you float into Trishula and you make it a 3300 beater. But unfortunately, it doesn't use the effect. But also when it's synchro summoned, you can banish up to 3 cards your opponent controls. It's not as good as Trishula because it banishes only cards you're on the field, but sometimes when going second, this card is much better than Trishula because you want to actually destroy your opponent's board instead of just trying to snap a card out of their hand. So this is why this card is much better going second, and if you can summon Trishula going first, that's much better going first. 1 copy of Crocosaurus. Sometimes you can get field for more monsters, and this card is actually disruption, so that's why it's better than Trishula when going first, and also gives you draw power, which is nice. One copy of Dragite. You only use this because you have a lot of waters, so you just use it for its negation. You cannot actually use the excavation effect to bounce cards. If you really want to make use of that effect, you can actually main deck Nibiru. If that's something you want, we'll give you a rock in the main deck, so you can actually have a chance of excavating it to bounce cards. But I think Nibiru, especially in this format, it's not really worth main decking even for that. In other formats that Nibiru is actually really good, then you can actually use that interaction as well. One copy of Gangnir, only water monsters because you get locked into waters very consistently with Mirror Master, so you just use Gangnir for the level 7 synchro because it's a really good card. One copy of Penguin Heroes, the disruption on turn 1, it special summons Nightmare Penguin from your deck and face down, and can actually flip it face up during your opponent's turn when they activate an effect, so you can bounce a card. One copy of Brionac, of course, it's Ice Barriers, you have to run Brionac, it's the all-time favorite monster of everyone's playing Ice Barriers because it was the only Ice Barrier monster along with Trish that actually saw play. Anything from the main deck was completely irrelevant, but these two cards, Brionac and Trishula, still see play. Even Brionac being a Rattata, it's still a really good card for the deck. For the Xyz monsters, play 2 copies of Bahamut Shark and 2 copies of Totally Awesome. You want to play 2 and 2 because you don't really want Totally to recycle itself or Bahamut Shark when it goes to the grave. You want to get one extender or maybe a Mirror Master, so you actually have 2 copies to get to the next turn. You can get them both during the first turn, and it would be better if we had Utopic Future Dragon, because if sometimes you do not get locked with Mirror Master, you would be able to use those 2 Bahamut Sharks to go into Utopic Future and then Utopic Future Dragon to give you another negate, but unfortunately this card is still not out in the TCG, so you just get your Bahamut Sharks out and they stay out unless they actually get destroyed. One copy of Honor Arc. You have to play this because you cannot play Castell or anything like that for removal, or Redoer because you get locked into waters, so you need to have something at least viable in order to be able to get out of the monsters your opponent has, and Honor Arc is not a bad card. It used to be a really powerful card back in the day, and it's still a decent card, so if you get locked into waters, it's the best rank fort you can go if you want to get rid of monsters. One of Beast Dweller, of course. Beast Dweller against some matchups is auto-win, and it also boosts your monsters because we'll always have a water as material. One Madragon of the Swamp, you play Instant Fusion, this is another extender. And one Mr. Boy, you rarely go into this, but I play just for the option. You can play Coral Anemone if you want to, but I don't think that's that necessary. I think Mr. Boy giving you the boost, being able to get you to go for game more consistently, is actually much better than a Monster Reborn because you do play a lot of extenders anyway. So yep, that's the deck, guys. Ice Barriers are finally a deck. It's a really fun deck. If you're a fan of waters, you can actually try this out. It's a really good deck. It's not the best deck, but you can actually get some free wins because getting 2 Totalies out on the field and Penguin here